Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today we're reviewing for you Samba de Amigo Party Central on the Nintendo Switch. This review was originally written by the wonderful Charlie Wackles and has been adapted for video by me. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling. Let's dive right into things. In the Wii's heyday, some executive or other higher-up at Nintendo dove into the multitude of factors that converged to make the Wii such a resounding success. Among those factors was the idea that motion, even at a minuscule level like flicking one's wrist, was tied to the brain's production of dopamine. Pairing that concept with the dazzling chimes and flashing lights of a video game intensified that sensation and added a deepened sense of interactivity. Flicking your wrist to swing a tennis racket in Wii Sports felt so good, and continues to hit different today in Nintendo Switch Sports. Yeah, the novelty's worn off a bit, but there's no denying that it just feels right. Whilst VR has carved out a niche for itself as the new home for motion-controlled games, the Switch Joy-Con controllers still make a good host for the occasional motion-fueled jaunt. Unfortunately, Samba de Amigo Party Central, the first true sequel to the original 1999 Dreamcast maraca-shaking game, doesn't use them particularly well. This is where a vast majority of Party Central's biggest issues stem from. Part of why previous entries in the series and other games with similar mechanics worked so well on previous consoles like the Dreamcast or Wii was because of how simple the motion controls at the time were. In Party Central, there are 6 points with 2 at each position, up, middle, and down. There are other very simple motions from time to time, but are often very similar to the things you'd be doing in other parts of the song, just shown to you in a different format. The Switch's Joy-Con are far more sensitive compared to the Wii Remote of yore. Countless times during an intense rendition of City Escape from Sonic Adventure 2 or TikTok by KE $HA, we found that the game read motion inputs incorrectly, either by reading the input in the wrong direction or detecting a body movement and registering that as a shake of Amigo's digital maracas, making it difficult to properly execute the intended motion. The issues were infrequent enough, but they were just annoying and invasive enough in Party Central's challenge modes and special missions, more on that later, that they occasionally caused a fail state. To make matters worse, the game doesn't properly communicate how to hold the Joy-Con or feature any sort of calibration settings to ensure accuracy. The closest it gets is a very easily missed diagram that's not entirely clear about how you should be holding your controllers. It just says to confirm that you're holding your controllers so that you can press the L and R button with your thumbs. It doesn't work and doesn't feel particularly ergonomic, especially compared to the Wii Remote's wand-like shape. After all, it's hard to hold a Wiimote incorrectly. In case anyone is wondering, the correct position is the thumbs-up grip from ARMS. It's been a while since we've seen you. Keeping in theme with the dated feel, you'll be greeted with a screen that warns you about the differences in inputs on your TV. Instead of getting the player to briefly calibrate their controls to the TV as many contemporary rhythm games do, Party Central simply suggests that you check your TV's settings to ensure that its game mode, or other equivalent mode, is enabled. That's a baffling choice, even if Party Central's rhythm-based gameplay is fairly forgiving, arcadey fun that's designed for little more than a fun game night. System-level changes aside, there isn't much new to Party Central aside from its 40-song tracklist, with songs ranging from Latin and contemporary dance music to dad rock hits that hit me nicely. And of course, a few songs from Sonic the Hedgehog and Friends make an appearance as well. The tracklist is solid, if a bit short, but Sega's promised that more songs are on the way in form of paid DLC. There are more featured in the game's Digital Deluxe Edition as well, which is where you'll find a restrictive number of Sega Sound Team's absurdly strong discography. Even the DLC that's on the way seems pretty scant compared to the options at the publisher's disposal. Songs take on a new depth and meaning at different difficulties, and like any solid rhythm game, you're rewarded for knowing the songs, and hitting the notes right feels great. But despite the minor issues we encountered with the motion controls not playing ball, it's a really fun take on the rhythm genre that adds an interesting layer beyond the standard loop you might expect. In addition to its standard mode, Party Central also adds a few new twists to the gameplay. One of the new modes is Streamago mode, which functions kind of like a story mode. Kind of. You're faced with a number of challenges and songs to complete in order to gain followers and grow your brand. In theory, it's a fun idea, but the follower numbers feel completely arbitrary. Failing a song or challenge will still net you followers and won't result in any negative side effects apart from you needing to just retry. Not being able to pick the songs associated with each challenge is a much bigger issue. Instead of choosing each song for each challenge, you're presented with a card with a challenge or requirement that you need to complete in order to pass the level. The beginning of this pseudo-campaign will present you with K Has first major hit, for example, a handful of times. It's not a bad song, but it certainly gets old after the first 5 attempts on a difficult mission. There are still some highlights here. Every once in a while you'll be presented with a boss fight of sorts. Any given song in the game is divided up into 5 sections. If you dance better than the boss does in a single section, you win that section and then get a point. Each win is calculated by points, but the game counts viewers instead, since each dance is supposed to take place on a live stream. It's an interesting idea, but again, the follower numbers feel wholly arbitrary. I mean, personally, I got 65,000 followers after doing one song. Anyone who's ever tried to do this job will tell you that is not how it works. The other notable new mode is World Party Mode, which is essentially a Samba de Amigo take on a battle royale. That's not a typo. It's a clever application of the game's multiplayer into an online setting, especially one relying on the Switch's so-so online capabilities. There's no lag, no stuttering or buffering, just lots of shaking of those maracas. Instead of being a sudden death gauntlet as one might expect, World Party follows a round-based format, booting the lower-ranking players after its first 2 rounds a la Fall Guys. Its final round, on the other hand, it is a sudden death throwdown between the lobby's best dancers. Hitting certain notes will let you earn an item that you can use to mess with your opponents. They range from attacks that speed up your opponent's tempos to an attack that makes their notes and beat zones smaller. One item causes some of their beat zones to disappear completely, and you'd think the challenge would be trying to guess where the note would be in the invisible zone, but instead, it just makes you completely unable to hit any note that goes to that area. It's really frustrating and it will cause you to lose. It's another confusing choice that feels like it just wasn't given a second thought. That one frustrating item aside though, it's really fun. Players that lose in the first 2 rounds get sucked into a black hole, screaming as they slip into the abyss. No, that's not a joke. It's absolutely hilarious. There are jaguars dressed up like the Blues Brothers, dogs in full suits, and dancing robot bears in the game's comically busy backgrounds. Small stuff like this points to the sense of fun that's lurking just beneath Party Central's seemingly ceaseless onslaught of experience and progress bars. Samba de Amigo Party Central brings back the cult classic monkey and all the fun that comes with him, but it does too much in the wrong places. By bombarding the player with no fewer than 3 different progress bars to level up in, any sense of growth, progression, or leveling feels arbitrary and completely unnecessary. They feel like an attempt to hide the fact that Samba de Amigo is an arcade game about a dancing monkey that you can dress up in silly little outfits. It doesn't need to be an RPG, so why make it like one? After all, Samba de Amigo is inherently fun, be it with maracas, a Wii Remote, Joy-Con, or just buttons. You've reached the end of the review. That means it's time for Alex's personal thoughts, and I had a lot of fun with this game, but yeah, it has some issues. The core gameplay is really good fun, but it does feel like a very limited and thin experience overall. It is just menus and different ways to get into doing essentially the same gameplay loop over and over again. I did like the inclusion of the crazy difficulty. Admittedly, at first I thought it was just, oh, it's gonna be an even harder one, but no. It's almost like a remixed version. You're doing a load of other random stuff, like more of the poses and the sweeping things, which I just generally shake my controllers around for anyway. The mission mode is a nice inclusion, but it just sort of feels like, for the most part, you just play the song well and you're all right. There's nothing really thrown in to like mix things up at all, except for at one point where, out of nowhere, a massive difficulty spike. It was just a mission where you had to get 0 or like less than 2 boos, which is where you miss a note completely. And considering the nature of the controls being as loose as they are, it's incredibly difficult not to get just 2 boos in a whole song. And I tried it several times, and every single time I just failed. I barely got anywhere because, sort of, one miss and then another. And it's, it never, I really felt like I was doing it properly, but the game just wasn't picking up my movements correctly, which is not really conducive to performing that perfectly. If it was later down the line, but it was like the 5th or 6th mission or something. And there's a lot of missions, so I don't know. It needs a bit more to mix it up a little bit more to add something new to the genre. It does just sort of feel like, in some ways, another rhythm game. As I say, I had really good fun with it, and it's definitely not a bad game, but yeah, I'm just going to go with what I said before. It's a good game, but it's a thin experience.